to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside Louisville, Kentucky. And in Maryland, where I presume it's either cold or snowing or raining or all of the above, John Webster, tell me, give me a weather report.
Hey, Gary, what's going on? Weather report. Right now, it's sunny. It has rained today. It has snowed today. It has been windy today. So who knows? I called to put an order in today with a company up in Connecticut, and they said that the salespeople were out because they're having a nor'easter in Connecticut. So I don't know what's going on with the weather, but we'll see. We'll see. John
Yeah,
Pitt, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, man. It's officially basketball season.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, it's definitely basketball season. But I'll say this: the football season went out with a bang. I ended up kind of watching it solo. Well, except for my dogs up there begging for Super Bowl food and stuff. But I'll tell you, for a Super Bowl that almost had me asleep at halftime, it finished with a bang. I can't say anything more about Patrick Mahomes that hasn't already been said in terms of his greatness before the age of 30. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. Congratulations to Mahomes. Congratulations to Andy Reid. And really, congratulations to the NFL for kind of putting on one of the better Super Bowls as a venue that I can recall in a long time. John Webster, what do you think?
Hey, man. Great game. Kansas City Chiefs came out on top. Congratulations to them. I've said to people, because you've had people already have begun some of the critical comments about San Francisco. I'm one that I believe Kansas City did more to win the game than San Francisco did to lose the game. Were there some things that happened? Yes. But what can you say, man? They're down, need a tie to get to overtime. Mahomes takes them down the field. Down 3 in overtime, Mahomes takes them down the field to get the winning touchdown. They're down 10-0. They don't panic. They pull it together. Some uncharacteristic things happen to Kansas City. Pacheco fumbled inside the 10. Mahomes threw an interception to start the second half. Yeah. Uncharacteristic. Their defense was struggling early in the game.
But then they turned it on.
They found the way. They kept doing. They kept, matriculating down the field and found the way to win the game. And you can't do anything but say congratulations to them.
Yeah. I think the Super Bowl kind of encapsulated their season as a whole, where they didn't look formidable by any stretch during the season. In fact, they looked downright vulnerable at points, and I think we even speculated that they were in danger of really not even winning their division because they were looking so bad. I mean, that's just how it was. And we were really talking about the offense sputtering, and that's something I don't think any of us really expected to do with when you're talking about Patrick Mahomes. But again, they found a way to get up off the mat. They dialed in. I don't know if it was so much a focus thing with them, because San Francisco did knock them off their game. What you said, John, is so right in that. Kansas City did more to win it than San Francisco did to lose it. I'm not going to say anything bad about San Francisco, because I think they did almost everything they did everything right except win. Really it came down to 2 plays on special teams, a blocked extra point and and I won't say a muff punt, but I mean a fumble or a turnover off of that punt that glanced off of off of a teammate's leg and stuff, and it's one of those freak things where you call it out and you try to keep him away from the ball, but that ball just landed where he was, and it ended up really turning the game for Kansas City on those two plays there, that turnover and then the touchdown, one play later. And that's what I knew it was going to be a different game. The thing I love about the Super Bowl, John, as great as Mahomes was in the clutch, as we've seen before, and maybe as we expected on Sunday, is that the Super Bowl brings out the unsung heroes, the role players that it's their moment. You kind of expect the superstars to do what they do, and they did, but it's just like the guys, the guys in the background, that the ones that toil during the week, the ones that toil on the practice squad, get called up, get their moment on the field, get their moment in the spotlight. And I think that last play, that game-winning touchdown, was really perfect in terms of finding God, well, I keep want to say Meekum, but
Miko Hardman.
Yeah, Mika. Yeah, I'm trying to get the pronunciation right, but that was really a great gutsy play call, and a guy that nobody expected to be in that moment, who just stepped up. And it was almost an identical play to the last Super Bowl that they won. And just being open like that. Again, I can't fault San Francisco for that play, because I mean, again, Kansas City basically had to adjust with what San Francisco was doing. They had everything covered the way that they were supposed to, and Mahomes and Reed just found a way. They just found a hope. When it came down to that 4th and 1, and Mahomes runs for the first down, you start thinking, okay, this game is good. This game ain't over yet. With the season on the line, he keeps it going. He extends the play, and it ends up extending the season. But that last play, and John, if you tell me you weren't screaming at the TV, call timeout, when those seconds are ticking off, you'd be lying. I'm going to call you a liar, because everybody was screaming. It's like, what are they doing? They're going to let time run out. Now, of course, it was going to be another, I mean, they still had a ball, and everybody, they thought it was just going to be a quarter change. And I think that's the way they acted, but, that's the way it looked. I'll say it like that. But they had other ideas, and I think that's what caught the 49ers off guard. And I think, that really there just comes down to coaching.
Well, go back on the overtime thing that you've said. Unfortunately, that would not be true. I did have an understanding of the overtime rules for overtime, probably better than some of the players on the 49ers had. So I did have an understanding of overtime and what it consisted of. That's the first thing. The next thing, as far as the only thing that I had a concern about, and I guess that's up to the team. That's up to a coach. In that situation, if I had won the coin toss, I would have deferred. But again, that's tomatoes, in my opinion. Let me tell you why I would have done that. I would have done it for the simple fact I wanted the ball knowing what I had to do to beat Mahomes, as opposed to Mahomes having the ball knowing what he has to do to beat me. So if I get the ball and I'm going against Mahomes, honestly, Gary, it doesn't matter let's say Mahomes. I'm going to defer, because I want to know, do I need 3 or do I need 7, as opposed to, do I need to stop him? Because the other thing that I look at, they got the field goal, but you almost needed to go for the 4th down, because Mahomes is coming back at you, and it's a good chance he's going to get a touchdown. So, but again, that's just me. Tomatoes. That's all I really see on that.
Yeah. It's real. Yeah. I agree with you, but again, I think that San Francisco was so confident that they could get that touchdown. I think that's why they did it. Of course, they came up short, but it's one of those things, John, where I know it's Patrick Mahomes, and you don't want to give him any kind of chance to hurt you, but I think given some of the shakiness that they had offensively during the game, I think they really felt like their defense, which had really played a good game up to that point, even with letting them come back. That I still feel like they felt like they could dial up everything they needed to do to really limit him. And again, he found the one crack. There weren't too many cracks in that defense, and yet he found it because of who he is. That's what really has to hurt. But again, I do think I probably would have deferred this the same way, because you put the onus on the offense to really move down the field like that. And it's easy to speculate what Mahomes might have done had they gotten the ball first.
Another thing, a lot has not been said about, and I think it really hurt their defense, is when Greenlaw got hurt.
Yeah.
And I guess he tore his Achilles, and that was such a freak accident.
Yeah.
But he covers so much ground as a linebacker. He can cover any tight end, and he's almost comfortable covering some running backs coming out the backfield. The other kid that came in, Burks, did a good job, but he's not Greenlaw. And I think that played a role with them as well. The unfortunate thing, end of the day, people are going to give San Francisco the blues. They're going to say Kyle Shanahan should have done this. Kyle Shanahan should have done that. It's easy to go armchair quarterback after the game. You got to look at some other things too besides Shanahan. Who would have expected Trent Williams to get 2 penalties back to back? A holding and an illegal motion. That cost him 15 yards on the drive.
Yeah.
The first drive of the game, who expects Christian McCaffrey to fumble? And think back to it, they were really matriculating down the field, and they were on their way to getting at least three. At least three.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought the kicker was named Moody, 68 for 68 the whole year?
Oh, yeah.
And he, what is it? They blocked the extra point. Those are things that Kyle Shanahan doesn't control. Those are mistakes that happen in a game. And, like I said, I'm not going to pin this on him and say, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. Yes, some things could have been different, but I learned a long time ago, man, you win as a team, you lose as a team.
Yeah.
And sometimes what people forget, Vince Lombardi said this many years ago. You remember when you lose, you remember to play at the game, at the end of the game. You remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But probably what lost the game for you is something that happened in the beginning that you've forgotten about.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. Everything you said, John. Again, I feel for San Francisco. I think it's short-sighted to really kind of pile on them about some of the play calls, because again, they had the not just the momentum, but they were kind of dictating things. They forced Kansas City to react a lot to what they were doing offensively. with through their defense and really, really through their offense, it's just, again, they a play here and there, not just on special teams, but like you pointed out, with Trent Williams and penalties and Christian McCaffrey. I mean, who would have expected Pacheco to fumble when he did? And I
Yes.
think that's what set off Travis Kelce, against Andy Reid, because he felt like he should have been in there. It's things like that, and you see that and you say, well, wait a minute, how in the world was he not in there? So um, that's
Hey,
the
Gary. Hey, Gary. Guess what, man? And let me give you the other one. How often do you go over in practice when you're on the punt return team? The ball hits down, you move away. How often do you go
yeah,
over that? You play ball. How often do you go over
yeah.
there?
Yeah.
And what
Oh, I
happens?
mean, yeah, that's the thing with special teams. I mean, like whether it's an onside kick and you've got the hands team and it's always one of those things at the end of practice where you run through that about 5 or 10 times and it seems like, yeah, you want to get off the field, but you do that because you need to remember it because at some point it's going to come, it's going to come up and you're going to need to do it. And I think again, that's one of those freak plays that you just feel for San Francisco that that one also comes down to coaching and telling your guys don't make a mistake you're going to regret, like don't do it because you were just out of place or something like that, and that's what happened. And again, that's unfortunate. The thing about that is for Kansas City is that was probably the break that they needed. I mean,
Yep.
obviously, it was a break that they needed to score, but with all else failing, and them having to go three and out, them having to punt the ball, just not really taking advantage of anything that it comes down to that and just say, look, that door open for us, let's walk through it, and in this case let's just run right through it.
Yeah. And like you said, Gary, all you can say is congratulations. And now we sit back and we see, can they do a three-peat?
I'm going to go out on a limb, John, and say no, because it gets harder every year. When you were, I think one time you talked about how hard it is to repeat because the NFL being a copycat league, that teams figure out how to beat them and make and expose their vulnerabilities if they don't beat them, and somebody eventually takes advantage. Um, I mean, teams during the regular season, took advantage and really forced them into a position of having to win out on the road during the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore
Mm-hmm.
and Buffalo just couldn't take advantage of that, even though Kansas City gave Baltimore all the opportunities in the world in the second half. Remember, they didn't score in the second half, just like they
Mm-hmm.
didn't score in the first half of the Super Bowl. You're talking about a whole game where they didn't score, and yet they come out, they still win the game. But I guess when I say no is that you can't play with fire like that three years in a row and expect to get something out of it. Do I think they're capable? Yes. But of course, now when you win a Super Bowl, what do you have to do? You have to keep the team together. And contracts are up, free agency, does what it does. And of course, you're looking at the draft and you kind of look at some problem areas that you really want to try to address. And I think change is inevitable, obviously, in football, that it just you just, as much as you want to keep the band together and and sing the songs, it just becomes harder every year you go at it.
I agree. One of the biggest things they're going to need to do is re-sign Chris Jones. I
Yes,
think he's
indeed.
playing on one year. I'm
Yeah.
going to say something to you really crazy, Gary, and don't punch me through the screen. Don't punch me through the screen. Do you? They need a receiver.
Yes. Yes.
Do you know? Do you know who I put a feel out for?
If you say McLaurin, man, I'm gonna think that you've been drinking.
Nope. Odell Beckham.
Whew.
If you get Odell Beckham, it's just like I say to you in baseball when I talk to you about your starters and having an ace. And then if you have an ace, the 2, the 3, and the 4 fall in the position where they belong. If you have Odell Beckham, then Valdez Scantling, Kadarius Toney, and the other kid, number 4, they fall in the position where they belong as opposed to being the number 1 receiver.
John, as out of as out of left field as that might seem, sorry to mix metaphors, but John, I'll say anything is possible. I mean, who would have thought that Beckham would have ended up in Baltimore, this past season? Of course, the biggest question is in that system, and receivers being the divas that they are, especially someone like Beckham who still feels like he's a primary receiver. If you're Andy Reid, how do you? I mean, just how do they not butt heads in some respects? I think Patrick Mahomes will obviously be the go-between. He'll find a way to weave him in if you got that kind of star power. And
keep in mind, Andy Reid coached Terrell Owens, and they went to the Super Bowl. So he knows how to deal with personalities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you figure that in this dynasty that they're in now, and there are guys that I mean, some guys like Tyreek Hill aren't there, and it's easy to wonder, gosh, how could they have won all 4 appearances as opposed to 3 out of 4 if Tyreek Hill was still there? It's like it doesn't matter because they won them, they adjusted, but if they're going to keep this, if they're going to really turn this into a long-term dynasty, and I think the potential is there. And by dynasty, I don't mean win, every year or even every other year, but just like a certain team in New England that established excellence over 20 years. Mahomes is 28. I still feel like he has at least one more Super Bowl victory in him. Just wait, just based on how that team is set up now. The draft will be important. Free agency will be important, and like you said about keeping Chris Jones, that re-signing might be the biggest one of their offseason because I mean, if it was. If you had to give a secondary MVP, he would have been it because I'm telling you, man, he was a force.
He was a difference maker. And plus they have those 4 defensive backs. They're all young kids, and they're only going to get better. And you got Spagnuolo, and he is one terrific defensive coordinator. He dials up a great game. So even if they don't win the Super Bowl, they're going to be in contention. I mean, you think about it. They beat Buffalo. They beat Miami. They beat Baltimore. Those are probably the 3 best teams in the AFC. And they beat the 49ers, who are the best team in the NFC. Come on, man. They found the way, man.
And this wasn't one of their best teams, too. That's the whole thing. This wasn't one of their best Super Bowl teams, and as vulnerable as they looked, as suspect even as they looked during the season, that they're resilient, and I think that's the biggest thing, the most impressive thing about this team. That I think I'd put on Facebook. I said you never count out number 15. That's one thing, but just the way again the unsung guys, like McCole Hardman stepped up and put themselves in position. I mean, even for like the 49ers, when they got that touchdown, and that was one I didn't think they were going to get, to be quite honest. And I mean, they forced Kansas City to react to everything that they did offensively and in a sense defensively, and they responded. And that's, again, I think the thing that really is going to make this one of the more memorable Super Bowl wins. And again, because they were not the best version of themselves during the regular season, but they found a way to just put all that aside and just step up, at the time they needed to.
Yeah. Agreed, my friend. Agreed.
Yeah. So before, I guess, we touched on that about a possible dynasty or sustained success. I do think some teams you got to keep an eye on. Like you got to keep an eye on Houston in the AFC. I think you really still have to keep an eye on Baltimore, and it depends on what kind of complementary pieces he gets. I think with Buffalo, they've got free agency free agency questions, particularly I think with Diggs. I'm not sure if his contract is up or not. But it's like, how do you keep that together? How do you get some more complementary pieces for Josh Allen to try to take it to another level? That's what happens when you're Kansas City and you've set a bar so high, you force everybody to really rethink their game plan, their business model, much like New England did with Belichick and Tom Brady.
You bring up some interesting points. Baltimore, I like the Ravens, but I think they're going to take a step back. Lost a defensive coordinator, lost another one of the defensive coaches. I think they're going to take a step back next year. They're still going to be good, but I don't see them being 14-3 next year, 13-4, whatever it was.
No,
I don't see that.
Yeah,
Buffalo, don't be surprised if Stephon Diggs is wearing a different uniform next season. He gets very frustrated. I'm not sure that him and Josh Allen are always on the same page. Honestly, if it happened, I think it would be a plus for both of them. He would get a new environment, new scenery, and Buffalo would find a way to find a new receiver. May not be as good as Stephon Diggs, but may fit better into the situation than Stephon Diggs. So I think it could be a win-win for both of them.
Yeah, there's a term, John, addition by subtraction, and I don't mean that to be a detriment to either one. And by subtraction, I mean Buffalo. If you lose Diggs, then you figure out a new way to do it without him. And Diggs, by finding new surroundings, he might be rejuvenated, especially if he goes to a contender. And speaking of contenders, I forgot to mention the Miami Dolphins as a team that you have to keep in mind that they obviously have to step up, but you can't underestimate them either in terms of that mix. And maybe even keep an eye on Las Vegas, under Antonio Freeman, and see what if they can build on what he did out there. I mean, I still think the AFC is a wide open conference, even with Kansas City's dominance, because there are so many teams that are just that close to being contenders, to really knocking them off. They haven't figured out a way to do it. I don't know if they're going to do it in the next year or so, because again, the rhythm, the role that Kansas City is on right now, I don't see them upsetting the mix, the chemistry anytime soon. And you got to figure out how to take it to the next level. Again, they're not going to win every year, but there's no reason to doubt that they can win it the way that it's constructed now.
They'll be tough, but that AFC West is going to be ridiculous. You got Antonio Pierce coming over there with the Raiders. You got Sean Payton with his second year with Denver. They're going to be better than they were last year. And of course, my main
if Russell Wilson is still there, that's the big question. Do you think Russell Wilson will be behind center to help get them there? I'm not sure he will be.
I don't my honest opinion, Gary, I don't think Peyton is a Russell Wilson fan. I think some of the things that he did this season were not in the best interest of Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson, being the class
Disrespectful to
person
him,
that
too.
he is, he stepped away and didn't make a lot of negative comments. I think Peyton will find another quarterback, to be honest with you. And I think Wilson will still find another place in the NFL. And last but not least, man, in the AFC West, my main man, Coach Kaki. Chargers going to be tough next year, man.
John. Hey, look, next year you might see me wearing my Chargers jersey a lot more. Much like you in your Notre Dame and Patriots jerseys, because I can't see him. I can't see him failing out there.
Look at the track record. Look at the track record.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the 49ers.
San Jose State.
San Jose State. And, of course,
Stanford.
Your Michigan Wolverines.
Michigan. San Francisco. I mean, everywhere he's gone, he has won. Everywhere. So I don't see it being any different here. And I just think Andy Reid, I mean, they're still, until you beat the champ, they are the champ. But, man, is it going to be a heck of a ride next year with the schedule they got to play?
Yeah. So, John, in terms of that, for every team in the league, the NFL draft in April, who do you think the number one pick's going to be? I mean, if you're Washington, and let's talk about Washington with all of those picks and a new coach and maybe a new attitude. I'm not going to say I'm not a Caleb Williams fan, but I don't know if you use a number one pick on Caleb Williams. What do you think? Who goes number one, and where does Washington really shake out in terms of trying to rebuild that roster?
I'll start with Washington. Then we'll come back to the number one pick overall with the Bears. If I'm Washington, I've said this before, Gary, I'm not sold that they have closed the door on Sam Howell. I'm not sold on that yet.
I agree.
I think that door is still open. I also think that what has been seen, Sam Howell can play in the NFL, and maybe if he was utilized a little bit differently, and I don't want to go back down the past and harp on that, but there may be a way to make him more effective than he already was last season. I'll say it like that. If I'm Washington and I need linemen on both sides of the ball.
Indeed.
I got a running back. I got some receivers. Also need some defensive backs. I have a lot of picks. I could get even more picks if I take the number 2 pick in the draft and trade down. And you can also get a quarterback later in the draft. Caleb Williams, let me be clear to what I'm saying. I am not saying Caleb Williams cannot play in the NFL. I am not saying that that's not what the Commanders, how do I want to say this? I just think it would be better for the Commanders to trade down and work on what they already have and get even more. You get a quarterback like a Caleb Williams and you don't have all the pieces around it. In my opinion, what good is it? You got a brand new Mercedes sitting in your driveway and you don't have wheels for the car. You can't drive it. It's just going to sit in the garage until you put some wheels on it. So there are other pieces to the puzzle the Commanders need. That's what I would do. Yeah. Now, let me also say that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I wasn't saying anything.
The number one pick, and this is something the Chicago Bears really need to think hard about. The talk is Justin Fields is not that. Justin Fields is not this. Justin Fields has played for 3 different offensive coordinators in the last 3 years. Am I right or wrong on that, Gary? At least 2.
No, you're right. At
least 2. How do you know what he is or he's not? Because you haven't put him in a consistent system.
Exactly.
You need,
Yeah.
if I were the Bears, I would trade down. I would keep Justin Fields. I would see what team I could work a deal with to come up to number one, and they could take Caleb Williams. And see, here's the other thing too, Gary. You got to think about this. When you take that number one pick, not the number one like you got the number one as the fifth, or you got the number one as the 10th. You got the number one overall pick. That's a lot of pressure.
Yes,
Baby,
indeed.
you better get it right. And Caleb Williams can play in the NFL, no doubt in my mind. But I think that you're putting a lot of pressure on him with people, and I don't mean you, Gary, when I say you,
No,
but
no, I know what you mean.
people are putting a lot of pressure on him. This is the next coming to Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Tom Brady, this, that, and the other. Let the kid get in the NFL first. Let him get his feet on the ground. Let him get into a system and develop himself. But as far as I'm concerned, with the Bears, trade down, roll with Justin Fields. Commanders, trade down, go with Hal, and get some more pieces to add to your team. That's my take on it. I'll also tell you what I also heard today. If the Bears decide to get rid of Justin Fields, there is a team in Pennsylvania that wears black and gold, and that coach has a love for Justin Fields.
Yeah, yeah. Here's the thing to keep in mind about the draft, John. And we've talked about Caleb Williams, but we haven't talked about who's really going to go number one, and that's Jaden Daniels from LSU. I do think he is an NFL quarterback. I do think I agree with you. Trade down, the Bears trade down, stick with him because I still think he has an upside. I think he has shown potential. But I think if you're talking about a quarterback that you can build a team around, I really think Jaden Daniels is that guy right now. No offense to Caleb Williams. I just don't see him as a number one pick right now with the way that with the way some offenses are. I think Caleb Williams is obviously a Heisman Trophy winner. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. But I think Jaden Daniels kind of took things to a different level in terms of showing how you can win games, or how he can win games for you, rather. And I like his upside. I kind of see him, kind of in the same realm, like with Houston. What they accomplished is this year with a rookie quarterback. That Jaden Daniels. He's got an arm, he's got length. He's despite having had injuries, he reminds me of CJ Stroud in the sense, with Houston, in terms of the way that he can extend plays and find receivers and get the job done himself. I think he's a guy that, if you're going to use that pick and you want to use it on a skill player, he's the guy. Caleb Williams goes number two. And that's probably, that if you trade up to get that number two pick or even a number one, either one of those two guys, I think you're in great shape. But I'm a Jaden Williams fan, and maybe I'm a little prejudiced because I saw him in the SEC. But I really like with the tools that he brings to the NFL.
Last question. Let me ask the last question. We're going to flip it for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the team that trades up to get Jaden Daniels?
Carolina.
If they trade up to number one, who's the team that trades up to number two?
New York.
Jets or Giants?
Oh, I'm sorry. Giants.
Hey, Gary Graves, you came strong to the mic, man. Take us on home, man. I can't follow that up. That was great, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'll just say this about the Giants. Again, I like Daniel Jones too, but I do think that, with the kind of money that they invested, and now he's coming off of off of an injury or something. Yeah, I think it's going to be a longer process. And I think you need a dynamic quarterback with the kind of receivers that you have there that have the potential to be breakout guys. I mean, obviously, you still have Saquon Barkley, but yeah, you've got potential with receivers there, and I just think he's the kind of guy. If you're the Giants, that you think about trading up for him. The Jets too might be willing. I forgot about them because I'm not really expecting Aaron Rodgers to come back. But that's the thing. We're going to look forward to all the speculation over the next 2.5 months to draft day, the combine. I don't pay attention to the combine. I don't pay attention to the draft until it's like right before, because again, I don't get real excited about job interviews or job screening. That's the way that I've always looked at the draft, especially in the NFL, because again, Mr. Irrelevant just played in a Super Bowl. A past Mr. Irrelevant just played in a Super Bowl. So you just never know. But that's why we watch sports, because you just never know. Folks, watch Caitlin Clark try to go after the scoring record. She's only 8 points away. Watch South Carolina, see if the women can run it out. Let's watch the NBA and see what happens with Doc Rivers in Milwaukee. There's so much to pay attention to with the NBA, and of course Steph Curry. If you watched the game last week, what he did to Phoenix. Oh my gosh! I mean, he still got it. So just watch sports. Yell at the screen. Don't break your nice flat screen TV.
Hey, watch some sports. Let me tell you, you don't have to go all the way back to last Saturday night to see Steph Curry still had it. Watching last night against Utah, you can see he still got it. He's a bad mamma jamma.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Watch some basketball. Watch the men's side and the women's side. Let's hope and pray that Gary's Kentucky Wildcats find a way to get back on the right page again. With that being said, we're going to see you all again real soon. Take care.